61. And again, I appreciate everybody being here. We have here Mayor Jerome Prince. He's the incumbent, and Senator Eddie Melton. He's a current senator. I'm going to allow you gentlemen a brief moment to introduce yourselves. Mayor is the incumbent. You can go first.
Thank you, Mr. Stout, and thank you all for being here this evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. So, my name is Jerome Prince, and I am the current mayor of the city of Gary. Prior to this, I was Lake County assessor, and prior to that, Lake County council person, as well as Gary City council person. I point that out for a very specific reason. That being is that I've got experience beyond what I've presently been able to accomplish or acquire as being the mayor. And those experiences certainly have helped me to address all of the challenges that exist presently. I want to go on to say that during my entire life, I've never run away from any responsibility or challenge. From the time my first son was born at 16 years old to enlisted in the Marine Corps at 18 and getting married to my wife Deanna, who's with me this evening, and point out that we've just celebrated our 40th anniversary. I point that out because that, to me, spells out stability. I mention those facts for a very specific reason, and that is, I think when we think about the mayor's office, and particularly the police department, we need to do so from a very realistic perspective. All of the challenges that exist in this city, and certainly the police department, I embrace. In fact, I take full responsibility of them. But I think it's also important to understand from a realistic perspective that many of the challenges that exist today have done so for a very long time. And it's unrealistic to think that we will accomplish or solve them overnight. I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do in the police department and in many areas of the city. But tonight, we're here to talk specifically about the Gary Police Department. I mentioned that as a segue to a couple of specific areas. Since I've been the mayor, what we've been able to do with the resources, the limited resources that we have, is to provide raises that you all haven't experienced in quite some time, and a significant raise, 15% over the last 3 years. We also utilize the ARPA funds to purchase new vehicles, equipment, and we're looking for additional opportunities in the form of grants to provide technology and other resources that you will need, not only to perform your jobs, but to keep yourselves safe. I say that also to point out the fact that last year alone, we were only able to collect $37.8 million in the general fund, and that's tax revenue. That's $49.5 million short of what we are entitled to collect. The reason being our tax caps, and everyone in here, whether you're a property owner or a business owner, probably appreciates tax caps. But the reality is that it creates huge impediments for city governments all across the county. Many people point to other municipalities and say, well, they're able to do it, and it's not really a realistic comparison for a number of reasons. Gary is the largest geographic area. Stop. Thank you. I'll get into some of that later. Thank you.
And I apologize. I should have pointed out to the candidates, Brother Cannon's going to be, he'll hold a 1 minute. When you have 1 minute left, and stop, and the time is up. Go ahead, Senator.
All right, good evening, everyone. Eddie Melton, State Senator, Senate District 3. Can you hear me okay? Let me turn it down a little bit. First off, I want to thank the FOP for having us out tonight. This is extremely important. I think we know that this is probably one of the most important mayoral races in Gary's most recent history. And I know now that said this, I would just say that right now, Gary deserves better and deserves better right now. And that's not a cliche. No opportunities wasted. I'm sure you guys have seen or heard the moniker, but this is something that we live by and we are true to. Right now, we know that every single city that touches the border of Gary has been prospering in some shape or form for the last 20 or 30 years. And it's time for Gary to turn that corner. Now, my opponent will say that there's been some accomplishments, and I'm eager to hear those accomplishments to figure out what exactly has been achieved to give you the resources that he and his administration have been able to do. We know we talked about the, I guess, 15% pay increase that I believe was vetoed originally up to 12% that the council actually had to push forward on. Those are just some examples of, as your next mayor, I will work collectively with the union to sit down in an honest fashion to make sure that we can secure, this is both police and fire, an agreement and a contract that's been long overdue. That's reality, that's realistic, to sit down in good faith fashion to figure out those issues. I can sit here and talk about my accomplishments, but I know we have come tonight to talk about the issues. You can go to my website, eddiemelton.com. When we talk about responsibility, I don't think it's being responsible relying upon the state police to come in to dictate or to tell us how we should maneuver as a city. I think you all have the expertise, the experience, and the knowledge on how to navigate this city. I think we have the leadership within this department to figure out how to lead this agency, to secure, make this entire city safe. You need the support. The city has to do its job to make sure that we lift our candidates, lift our community out of poverty and all the issues that plague them on a historic basis that contributes to crime, that contributes to so many issues that you all run to solve every single day. So you have my commitment that we will work collaboratively together. Even if we don't agree, we'll figure out how to solve those issues together as a collective. I just want to thank my wife for being here as well, Crystal. We are residents here, our children, our family. We're committed to the city of Gary, and I'm excited to see what we can get accomplished as we work together. And I will say this, I think the mayor has a great heart and passion for the city, but I think we can do better.
All right, thank you. We're gonna do a forum, obviously. After the forum is done, we'll clear the room of everybody that's not an FOP member, and then a vote will be taken. Candidates are gonna be allowed 3 minutes for introductions. We did that. 3 minutes to answer questions that'll come from the moderator, and then 1 minute rebuttal if necessary. We'll also do a closing at the end. We'll ask the mayor the question, and we'll go to the senator, and then the second question, the senator will start, and then the mayor will answer second. First question, Mayor Prince, what makes you the best candidate for mayor, and why should the FOP endorse you?
Thank you. I think that's a great and fair question. What makes me the best candidate, I think, are a number of things, but the greatest attribute is the experience, not only prior to becoming mayor, but certainly the experience that I've gained in the last 3 years of understanding what the challenges exactly are. And so I'll point out, I also would certainly appreciate the opportunity to provide a contract, one that hasn't happened in a very long time, but we have to understand the finances or the financial aspect of running the city. And it's difficult to replace a loss of $49.5 million. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, those are the facts. But what I do want to point to is the fact that we've been able to reduce over $7 million in our long-term debt. And it's our plan to continue on that path in order to provide resources, not only to give raises to the police department, but the fire department, the general services employees, and everyone. I think everyone in Gary who works for the city of Gary deserves a fair wage, and they certainly deserve to be compensated for the work that they put in. The only way that you can do that is with the resources. I also want to point out that this is something I've been doing for a very long time. As a member of the county council, I was the sole member who advocated for and introduced a funding source that to date, over the last 10 years, has provided $66 million for public safety. The police department is a benefactor of $33 million of that. It was a risky move. It was certainly something that wasn't met with a lot of appreciation, at least by a certain particular segment of the community. But the reality is, Lake County was the only county in the state of Indiana for years that did not have an income tax. And as a result of that, that tax provided an additional funding source for our police officers that's being utilized today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Same question. What makes you the best candidate for mayor, and why should the FOP endorse you?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'll answer it in a couple ways. Number one, I think from what I hear from not just rank and file, but what I hear from citizens is the lack of vision that has been for the city and the direction that no one really knows that the city is going into. Part of what I've been able to do to accomplish downstate and bringing resources here back home every single year into my second term is being able to work collaboratively across the aisle with both Democrats and Republicans. We know that we live in a supermajority state. We know that it's almost impossible to get a lot of things accomplished. And contrary to what some of my critics will say, I've been able to produce and bring that back home. Now, one of the things I would say, why should the FOP endorse me? I would say because you will have a mayor that's going to listen, that's willing to work with you to figure out those issues. And if we had an opportunity, we had 3.5 years to figure out a contract, I'm sure that could have been accomplished if that was a goal and objective. But the objective to me is to ensure that you sit down in good faith, figure out those issues, and it may not be all fiscal and financial. There may be some issues that may be holding us back that we may not agree upon, but we sit down and iron those issues out. Now, in terms of the funding source that was mentioned, the Lake County income tax, and I'm trying to be mindful of the time, it's a two-edged sword with that. Yes, it was maybe difficult to pass, but what's not being told is that the Lake County income tax, Lake County is the only county in the state of Indiana that retains that tax and does not give it back to the local municipalities. Out of 92 counties, Lake County is the only county that does not redistribute that back to the local municipalities. That's the money that should be going in our pockets. And I'm glad he actually admitted that to us openly today, in our pockets, to help fund public safety locally, education, and so many other issues, health and safety. These are the facts. So when it comes down to funding sources and funding streams, part of with collaboration, the federal government and state government has to happen. We have to have a very transparent way of dealing and partnering with our state and federal partners. And those are relationships that I have to this very day, and I'm going to continue to have and continue to build upon.
All right, thank you both. For the folks standing, there are some seats in the front here. If anyone wants to come up front. That means nobody, I guess. All right, Senator, you'll get asked this question first. If elected, and a lot of these questions, obviously, because this is a police union, that they're going to be police related. So if you run out of time, you're probably going to get a chance to say it on another question. But if elected, what is your vision and plans for the Gary Police Department and public safety collectively?
Thank you. That's a very good question. As I sit and I talk to many of the officers, both in leadership and those that's working every day on the street, number one is just offering you my daily support, but here's how we want to do that. Number one, your health and safety is extremely important. When the average citizen is running away from issues, you guys are running into those issues, similar to our firefighters. So I want to make sure that from a health and safety perspective, from a mental health perspective, from a physical perspective, we are investing in you to make sure you have what you need in your families. Looking at the ways to raise revenue, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, to ensure that we can raise those wages in a competitive way, because we know Hammond, Hobart, Maryville, they're all coming recruiting because they know that you're the best trained, the most well-equipped to come into their communities to help make sure that they're safer. We have to make sure our wages are more competitive. We have to make sure our benefits are more competitive. And that's something that, as a mayor, you can sit down with those agencies and with those insurance companies to help negotiate better prices for not just police and fire, public safety, but all city workers. From an environment perspective, I know when I sit down, and I grew up on 7th and Tyler. I used to walk by the public safety building every single day when I went to Worcester High School. And I know that building was built in 1908. And I know you guys are taking roll call in the middle of a morgue. When I sit and I hear those stories, and I hear about the leaking roof, I hear about the environment, the mold, that's no condition for you all to be in. For a personal perspective, the morale is extremely important as you go out to protect us every single day. So we have to do everything that we can to make sure you have the resources personally and that you go out and you ensure that. And let me know how I'm doing on time, because I got a lot more to go.
You gotta watch right here.
Yeah, one more minute. All right, so opportunities of growth and professional development. Most organizations, be it both either corporate, nonprofit, they have a pathway for individuals for success. If you're a rookie or you're starting out, you have to have that vision, knowing that what's that pathway for me to grow within the organization. We want to share that. We want to make sure we have those that mapped out, give you professional development opportunities, the training and resources that you need. But also, what does it look like 5, 10 years from now? What's that path to success that you can grow and retire within an organization and from a rank perspective? But I think it's extremely important when we talk about those that have been seasoned and there for a while. How do we get you to the level financially to make sure that you can continue to sustain your family, but also looking from a retirement perspective, retirement with ease. So all of the investments that we're going to look at is just making sure that we provide you that basic resources, that basic leadership that's needed to move this part forward.
Thank you. Mayor Prince, elected department and public safety collectively.
If reelected, it's to continue the path that we are presently on. Yes, there are a number of challenges within the police department. We spoke about earlier, it was mentioned, our collaboration with the state police state police force. It's not a takeover. This is an opportunity to bring a second set of eyes in to create the type of structure that's not only needed in our police department, but our fire department, our general services, and the entire city. We are rebuilding this city, and in order to do it, you have to, A, understand what the issues are. So, for instance, the fact that Lake County does not give back the taxes to the local municipalities, well, that could be easily said it's not accurate. A portion of our overall county rate is reduced as a result of the income tax, and that within itself is a savings for our citizens. The officers that are now working, we get an opportunity. In fact, I had an opportunity to attend all of your roll calls, or at least once every shift, maybe a few weeks back. And at that time, I had an opportunity to speak with some officers and command staff, and it was my impression that the majority of them who we spoke with believed that we are on the right path. What they wanted most is structure. They wanted to understand that the chief, and it doesn't matter whether he's an interim or a permanent chief, in this instance, they want a chief that supports them, a chief that will provide opportunities for them that they haven't realized in the past. The point is that as we continue to look forward to our city being rebuilt, we have to, A, understand exactly what our issues are, but also we have to understand a realistic pathway towards the enhancements that you want to see. The budget itself is the biggest factor that realizes or that creates an impediment for not only our officers, but for the citizens as well, because in many instances, the services that you demand and the services that you're entitled to are being delivered, but they certainly aren't being delivered to the level or the expectation of all of our residents. Reason is you have to have the resources, you have to have the finances in order to accomplish that. And presently, we do not have that. Relative to the police department, I think Major Chief Jerry Williams is doing an outstanding job. He's addressing every area, including the facility that, by the way, I voted against 20 years ago. Not that I knew that it certainly wouldn't work, but it was a hospital, and it was one that certainly should not have been converted into a public safety facility. I think the most egregious part of that is the oldest portion of it, which was supposed to be demolished then. I point that out because I have a history and experience of making decisions that are not always popular, but certainly that are in the best interest of our citizens. And as the mayor, I will continue to do so with your support. Thank you.
Yeah, rebuttal, is that okay?
Well, we do allow 1 minute for rebuttal, if you could time that out.
Yeah, more happy to. So when we mentioned about the second set of eyes from the Indiana Police Department, State Police Department, it was originally sold to us that they'll be here, 3 months, 4 months? And we're well past 3 or 4 months. It's almost close to a year probably. So when we ask, when we speak about a second set of eyes, I think that is not as clear as what has been portrayed. And I agree, I like and support the current interim chief, but the mayor just said, it doesn't matter that we have an interim chief. Well, that contradicts what he says as far as stability. There has been a lack of stability for the last 3.5 years. So I think that's a contrast there. Simply, I'll go this from a budget perspective. If the American Rescue Plan dollars had not come to this city, how would he have addressed any of the issues that he's talking about today, that he's been able to provide you? What was the plan day one when he took office? So I ask you to think about that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
yes.
think we have a rebuttal to a rebuttal.
Mentioned it in another.
Yeah, there's gonna be plenty of time and plenty of questions related to all this. Okay, next question, Mayor, will go to you, and then follow up with the senator for the second. Since June of 2020, the Gary Police Department has been ran by an interim chief. First was Chief Brian Evans, and currently Chief Jerry Williams. If reelected, what are your plans to appoint a full-time sworn police chief and what weight will you give to selecting a chief from the current ranks of the Gary Police Department?
Thank you. So I'll start with the latter part of the question. I believe that the permanent chief should come from the ranks if possible, and I believe it's certainly possible. Right now, what needs to happen is the complete restructuring of the foundation. We started off, and it was mentioned that it was initially touted as 3 months. That was the goal, but unfortunately the work is not done. And to that point, that's why we decided, and we as a collective administration decided to stay with the chief that's in place, because I believe that that provides the greatest opportunity for the type of stability that we need to see. I believe that's happening now in just about every area of our police department, including going out finding a funding source for a new facility. We purchased new cars, we've certainly been able to buy new equipment, and it was mentioned that the ARPA dollars, what would we have done? I shudder to think what we would have done without the ARPA dollars, largely because I want to point to the raise that was provided. I mentioned earlier that it was 15% over the period of the last 3 years, but the point is that we need to be able to sustain it. So when we talk about collective bargaining and enhancing pay and creating better wages, we have to do so under the premises that we can be able to sustain it. And presently, after there are no more ARPA dollars, after next year, we have to find a way to sustain the 15% raise, over 15% over the period of 3 years that's been provided. We are presently in the cusp of another deficit that's going to occur once our levy increases and the ARPA dollars go away. It's projected right now that our deficit next year will be $5 million. We have to find another opportunity to reduce operations or reduce funding or reduce expenses is the word I'm looking for in certain areas in order to provide those type of continued raises, if you will, or at the very minimum to provide the services and the resources that our department needs on a daily basis. It's a tough job. It's one that I certainly continue to embrace, but the experience and certainly having understood it over the last 3 years certainly would dictate that it's not as easily done as said. I point out to you, if that was the case, you all would have received raises long before I got here. You certainly would have had a contract, and you certainly wouldn't have had to be riding around in cars that are, in some instances, 10 or 15 years old. Those are the areas that we attempted to address immediately. Those are the areas that we'll continue to address under the leadership of the present chief. I'm not a police officer. I've never been one, but I respect the job that the men and women do. I've always been told that if you don't have the information and the ability, or certainly the wherewithal to make adjustments to a specific area, you seek the knowledge and the experience from those who do. In this instance, I believe Major Jerry Williams has exemplified that through his past career, and I think he continues to as our present chief. And I believe that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
You need a question repeated, sir? If so, I can do it. Since June of 2020, the Gary Police Department has been ran by an interim chief. First was Chief Brian Evans, and currently it's Chief Williams. If elected, what are your plans to appoint a full-time sworn police chief, and what weight will you give to selecting that chief from the current ranks of the Gary Police Department?
Yeah, well, I can answer the last part very quickly, is yes. That's the first objective, is to work within this department to find the next chief. But let me go back. We can't gloss over history, because we just mentioned the current interim chief, Brian Evans, but we haven't talked about Colonel Liggins. I don't think if we're going to talk about history, we have to talk about it in totality. And I love Colonel Liggins, but I'm just going to talk about this specific situation. We can't gloss over it. When this mayor came into office, he made a decision. He hired a chief of police. He then tried to change the law to keep that chief of police as chief of police. I did not vote for that bill. I told the mayor, I said, I can't, in good conscience, make that decision. The bill passed. 6 months later, he was gone. My colleagues downstate, on the other hand, is asking me, what happened? Why did we go through all of that? And they fired him anyway. So as we're going to talk about that decision, we have to talk about it in totality. And so I'm going to make sure that, so yes, I have the confidence and believe that you all know who has the skill set, the knowledge. Do I know it all? Absolutely not. I think that's part of leadership. In leadership, you put the right people around you to help you make the right decisions. And yes, you go out and seek that knowledge and information if you don't have it. I agree with that. But at this time, let the track record speak for itself. Do we have another 4 years to try to figure this out? I'll let you think about that.
Just a little bit, and certainly I'm not going to cover Colonel Liggins. It was a decision. I think he did the best that he could, and to that extent, you know, it didn't work out, and so we pivoted and went to Brian Evans. The point is that the current chief right now is doing exactly what you all asked for. One of the things that I heard oftentimes is that regardless of who the chief was, nothing ever changed. Command staff stayed the same, people didn't have opportunities, and this chief, in my opinion, is reversing that trend. And it's my desire that at the end of his tenure, and it's supposed to be in July, that the structure and the foundation that's needed in order to have a functioning, efficient police department will exist. And as it was asked earlier, would I choose an officer from the ranks? That would be the desired intent. If the chief is comfortable with what he's established and what he's identified as leadership or potential leaders in the department, which is part of his responsibility, I'm confident that he'll give a recommendation from the chief of who the next chief should be.
I did not allow him to rebut the rebut, so. We have some officers standing in the hallway. There is some room in here, and there's some chairs up front here if you want to come inside, or just open both doors. I don't want anyone to miss anything. And I have to apologize. Did I start with you on the last question?
I believe so.
Okay. Senator, recruiting and retaining police officers has become increasingly difficult, not only in Gary, but across the nation. The Gary Police Department currently has 152 officers on the payroll, with numerous budgeted spots unfilled. There are over 25 scheduled retirements between now and the end of 2025. And many other officers considering moving on to other departments or into the private sector. The question is, if elected mayor, what are your plans and what would you do to not only make our department more attractive to potential officers, but to retain the officers that we currently have?
Right. I think we talk about wages, we talk about benefits. I think that's all at the source of retention. I think when we also talk about other benefits and other opportunities, we have to look at how do we just build that bench from a long-term perspective, right? So let me talk about the recruitment aspect first. When you look around the country, and this is a national issue, we have cities around the entire nation that's having a hard time filling positions. But Gary seems to be the only city in the state, and I'm literally saying that because I'm at a state level having these conversations where we're getting our officers siphoned away from us because of more competitive wages and opportunities. But from a recruitment perspective, I think we have a window of opportunity, especially with our younger folks, with our youth. Is there a way that we can work with the private sector, our philanthropic sector, to start more of youth programming for youth cadets, to introduce them to the pathway of public safety, to let them know they can have a profession in public safety, to teach them about that and give them that pathway of growth and opportunity. When we talk about, as far as even for the firefighters' perspective, I see our firefighters are here as well. There are junior firefighter programs. All of these things, and I'm reaching back to my personal experience as a mentor, to figure out how do you introduce youth to the access, because if they're our future, we have to give them access and let them know that it's an opportunity for them to live here, work here, grow here, play here. But from a retention perspective, you all know better than I would. I think it's having a mayor that's going to listen, to figure out what those issues are, what are those barriers, and how do we move past them. And I think having a conversation, like right now, hearing the difference of issues and opinion, is how we get there. But we have to have that conversation and have it honestly. And I'm not going to be the mayor that's going to tell you something just get elected. If I can't, I'm not going to make you a promise that I can't deliver on. If I don't, you have another opportunity to either hire me or fire me in another 4 years. But right now, we have a track record that we have to heavily analyze to figure out how effective has it been for current recruitment and retention. We can look at other opportunities as well to grow this department, but we have to make sure the resources are there. We have to make sure that we are already partnering and leveraging with the other neighboring agencies, the Lake County Sheriff's Department, partnering with the state as well. But how much time we wrapped up on that? Because I want to touch on something real quick. It was mentioned earlier, we have to figure out how to sustain the 15% that he just mentioned that he approved. Remember this a year from now. As a leader, you have to figure out how to sustain a budget. Well, we should have done that in the beginning, at the onset, because if you're going to make a decision to make an investment, and you don't know how it's going to be sustained, you already anticipate a problem.
Thank you, Senator. Same question. Recruiting and retaining officers has become increasingly difficult, not only in Gary, but across the nation. The Gary Police Department currently has 152 officers on payroll with numerous budgeted spots unfilled. There are over 25 retirements scheduled between now and the end of 2025, and many other officers considering moving on to other departments or into the private sector. If reelected, what plans will you implement to not only make our department more attractive to potential officers, but to also retain the officers that we have?
Thank you. So first I want to speak to the officers, or the fact that we have unfilled budgeted positions. The reason that is because of the inability to fill it. In fact, before I was the mayor, you all opted to forego filling some positions in order to get a minimal raise at that particular time. To me, that's an evidence of the issue and the impediment that exists from a funding perspective. In terms of recruiting and retention, from a retention perspective, I believe we're already working towards that path. One of the things that we've done recently with the support of the City Council is create a down payment assistance program that will provide $30,000 in down payment assistance to officers or public safety officers. The hope there is that we will get officers who want to not only stay a member of the Gary Police Department, but who would also want to reside in the city itself. I think that that's a huge effort, but in terms of the recruiting efforts, I believe that that certainly is one of the responsibilities of the chief collectively with you all, and it's my understanding that he's established working groups, and one of the categories that is part of that working group are retention and recruiting efforts. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I believe that we are on the right path. I believe that given an opportunity and certainly supported by the men and women of the rank and file, that we will have success, and certainly we will realize enhancements in various areas of your operation. But I point back to the fact that it's good to say what we'll do and certainly what we want to do, but it also has to be considered from the premise of the ability to do it. And it's difficult to replace $49 million in lost revenue as a result of the tax caps. You know, unfortunately, we don't have time to revisit that, but I'll certainly talk about experience again. As a city council person, I opposed the legislation that actually created tax caps some 20 years ago, for the reason that we knew one day we would be at this juncture, and the fact that we are unable to provide the basic necessary services to the level that our citizens require, that they demand, and certainly they deserve.
Thank you. All right, next question will be, we'll start with Mayor Prince. Within the past several years, the city of Gary's population has seen a significant decline in It's kind of a rough question now. Let me try that again. Can't blame anyone, I typed this one out. But last several years, Gary's population has seen a significant decline. Although the reasons are vast, what are your specific plans to increase our population and to make Gary a place that people want to move into and raise their families?
Thank you. So that statement is largely true for the 10 years that preceded the last census, but actually the last year of that, the population has started to increase. I believe that Gary is a beautiful place, and I believe that others believe that as well and will consider moving here. But they want what you want in other communities. They want the same amenities that you can get in other communities. They want a safe community. They certainly want to realize an opportunity to send their kids to schools that will help them develop themselves into the best that they could be. They also want housing opportunities that you can get in another community. Right now in Gary, the 75% of all of our housing stock was built prior to 1980. We have to reverse that trend, and by creating a housing down payment assistance program that's not only for public safety officers and city employees, it's opened up to the citizens at large. We're trying to everything we can to attract and retain people. But most of all, I think we have to show that we can deliver honest, fair government, something that I've done in the last 20 years of my service, something that I've done over the last 3 years as mayor, and something that comes easy to me because I value my opportunity to serve you as an elected official, and I certainly value the integrity and the respect and the character and reputation that I've developed, not only as an elected official, but as an adult raising a family right here in this community. And so to that extent, we'll continue to do mostly what we've done, but we also will look for additional opportunities to make this a more attractive city and what we like to consider as the potential to be a destination city.
Thank you, Mayor. Same question, Senator. Within the last several years, Gary's population has seen a significant decline. Although the reasons for this are vast, what would be your specific plans to increase our population and to make Gary a place that people want to move into and raise their families?
Thank you. I think many of us have seen the headlines, the blogs around the country that calls Gary, quote unquote, the most miserable city in the United States. And we know that's not true. And because everybody in this room is evidence that there's hope and there's opportunity in the city within the people. But as mayor, we have to leverage the opportunities we have today. We're the only city in the Midwest, if not in North America, that have all of the assets and infrastructure that every other city rivals and really wish they had. An international airport, a foreign trade zone, deep water seaport, 3 Class 1 rail lines, 8094, I-65. All of these assets we have to maximize on right now. So how do you grow a population? You let folks know what assets and resources and opportunities exist. And we have to control the narrative about Gary to the rest of the world and not let the world dictate that to us. So we have to grow our economy. Yes, we have to have public safety, but we also have to make sure we demolish and have a plan to demolish over 6,000 abandoned homes. Yes, and 300 plus commercial properties. When we start showing that progress to individuals, that we're making those investments, that we're bringing investors both locally and nationally to the table to address these critical issues, folks will start looking at the opportunities. And right now, I'm the only person on this ballot that has anything to do with the South Shore double tracking project. I'm the person that voted for that project, and you see the progress that's taking place in Miller. You see in the new station. But right now, we have to move further with that. The South Shore was supposed to bring in the Chicagoland area and meet us to make sure we grow this population because we are, quote unquote, that bedroom community to Chicagoland area, the second or third largest economy in the nation. And we have to start tapping into that. But we have to make Gary more attractive, and we got to control that narrative. We got to also make sure we make this inviting to entrepreneurs and innovation. Things that we haven't had that leverage to use before. So, as mayor, yes, we're going to make sure we have a sound educational system. We want to make sure we will have a sound, inviting business economy, and let folks know and make it easier and more simpler to do business in the city. Because right now, folks don't feel like they have the window of the trust or the faith to move forward in a lot of projects. And we've seen evidence of that time after time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I'll just leave you with that. Gary is an attractive city, and, certainly people are taking a second look at it. But from a business perspective, I believe that a wise, intuitive business person considers all of the variables that exist in a municipality before they locate here. And certainly, it's been a long time. Most of our businesses are ones that certainly cater to what a lot of our demographic purchase, right? And we know what those businesses are. But I believe that once we turn our city around, and certainly we will see something happen, or at least increase businesses. I want to point out one particular thing, though, and it was mentioned that there was only one candidate who had something to do with the double track. I think that's where experience comes from, and certainly memory, right? As a member of the county council, we were the first body, right? I supported that legislation, the deferral of our income tax revenue for the double track project. And I tell you, this city at that particular time actually sponsored a resolution against it. And had it not been for the county council initiating that, then I don't know where we'd be. Perhaps people would have had a difference of opinion or changed their mind, but I think one of the things that you have to do as the mayor is certainly understand the history from a very factual perspective in order to move forward. And that's what I
Thank you,
assert
Mayor.
to you that I do. Thank you.
We're up on time. We'll be concluding. Next question goes to Senator Melton. What would you consider your greatest accomplishment in your personal life outside of politics? This is a two-part question, by the way.
that the first part?
That's the first part.
What's the second part? As it
Uh,
Okay. I mean, the simplest way I can say this is my family. I don't take it for granted that every single day that I jump on the highway heading down to Indianapolis, that my wife Crystal, who's here with me, that she has allowed me to serve this city. And because of the love that she's shown and how carefully she takes care of our children, I know I'm truly blessed. So just being able to have that family, know that love is here, that allows me to serve the city and this district as your state senator, and hopefully as your mayor, I would say that's my greatest accomplishment.
The second part of the question, what is your greatest accomplishment in your political career?
I would say simply the Hard Rock Casino. When we sought to get the casino, and move the casino from Buffington Harbor to land base, my predecessor, Senator Ernie Rogers, tried for over 2 decades to make that happen. And we were able to get that done in my second year in the legislature. And I wasn't some bystander hoping and wishing that this would happen. I was actively involved. And that began with one simple piece of legislation that I was able to pass, which was a study, to study Gary's best and highest opportunities with the assets and infrastructure in the city of Gary. I brought in the leadership of the Senate to Gary that had never been here before. And they stood on the shores of Buffington Harbor on the top of the parking garage, and they seen the beauty, they seen the industry, and they seen the opportunity. So this conversation shifted from when Senator Rogers was in office to just expansion of gaming. It shifted to how do we leverage the economic opportunity in Gary from its logistics opportunity perspective. So yes, from going from the lowest revenue generating casino in the state for almost 20 years to the highest in almost 2 consecutive years, I would say that's an accomplishment. To go from 600 jobs to 1,400 jobs, and the majority of those are Gary citizens, I would say that's an accomplishment. So that's just the beginning. I'm not here to tout my Senate track record, but I'm able to pull that up and I can show you what we've been able to accomplish and how that translates to direct impact to the city.
Thank you. Mayor, same question. What would you consider your greatest accomplishment in your personal life outside of politics?
That's a great question. I think it's certainly a fair question. I, could point to the most obvious accomplishment, and certainly from a personal perspective, I feel that that's my greatest, and that's convincing Deanna to stay with me for 40 years. Getting married at 18. But the point is, yeah, like the senator, I certainly admire and love my family, and to that extent, that remains my first priority. Greatest accomplishment in life, it's a number of things that we've been able to accomplish, but most of all, I think it's the fact that I understand that it takes more than just me to make anything happen. As in a family, I mentioned Deanna has been the glue to that. As an elected official, it takes collective, collaborative efforts in order to bring the type of change that's needed. And to that extent, nothing's no different for me at this particular point.
And your greatest accomplishment in your political career?
Again, I'd have to sit back and think of a number of things. I'm proud of the fact that as Lake County Assessor, we were able to straighten out an office that had been plagued with backlog of appeals, an outdated computer system, and quite frankly was the disgrace of all county assessors in the entire state. We accomplished that in a little bit more than one term, and to that extent, being the first African-American assessor in that office and ensuring, or at least assisting in being replaced by a competent assessor, I think is a huge accomplishment professionally. As the mayor, I think that we've only began to scratch the surface of what is possible, but the reality is that there are a number of challenges. I understand that I can't do it by myself, and to that extent, I want to continue on the path that we're on in order to rebuild this city.
All right, thank you. Final question, and then we'll close. Question goes to you, Mayor. If you are not endorsed by our, this question is gonna be asked to both. If you are not endorsed by our body, but elected on May 2nd, will you still work with the FOP for the betterment of our police department and public safety as a whole?
The simple answer is yes. You know, I just want to share something again from a historical perspective. I haven't been endorsed by a number of organizations. Not certain if I was endorsed last time by this organization or any political entity. You know, sometimes you get an endorsement, sometimes you don't. But at the end of the day, we all still have to work together collectively.
Absolutely.
I believe that I've shown the ability to do that, and I certainly will continue.
Thank you. Same question. If, at the conclusion of this forum, if you are not endorsed by our body, but elected on May 2nd, will you still work with the FOP for the betterment of the police department and public safety as a whole?
Yes, and that's the short answer to that. I think, just to elaborate on it, as long as we all have a common interest, which is the betterment of the city and the upliftment of the people and protect the city, we'll always be on the same page. And I think that's, from what I've seen, what I've heard from the officers that I know, those that I meet casually, I think that's a consistent thing. So you can count on it, you can bet on it. But for me tonight, it's not about coming to seek an endorsement, but tonight was to come to share more about me and the vision, and to continue to build a relationship and rapport with those that I know and those that I don't know, just to show you how you can have a mayor and a leader that can be able to conversate, disagree, but also look at what's the commonality that moves us forward, and that's the people, that's the citizens of the city.
Thank you. We will now do our closings. Time-wise, we'll allow 3 minutes for closing. I allowed him to open, so I will allow you to go first for the closing.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the FOP for having us out tonight. I want to thank each and every one of you, both just average citizens, for being here as well. What I hope that you heard tonight is just a difference of thoughts, a difference of opinion, but I do think both the mayor and I love the city, and I think that's the truth, to be honest. I think there's a difference of how we arrive at success. I believe that we both have a difference of opinion on a variety of issues, but I think there's a common thing here of us both caring. This specific election gives us an opportunity to either choose stagnation or to move forward. And right now we know that we have not seen a plan, we have not seen any level of a strategy to move us forward. We've seen glimpses of projects here and there, but what is that collective strategy and plan? And we're going to be rolling that out from our perspective to share with the citizens of Gary, so you can decide if you want to choose where we currently are, or you want to give it another 4 years to see if we can figure out how to get there. To address some of the issues that was brought up tonight in terms of understanding the history or understanding the actual budget. Yes, I understand a variety of those issues more than my opponent think I do. But right now, as we look at how do we solve the most critical problems, of how we address the issues, the lack of resources, we have to grow our economy in the city. We have to grow our tax base in the city. We have to keep folks here. We have to bring folks in as well to grow the tax base in the city. We have to do that in a variety of different ways. So over the next couple of days, we're going to be rolling out what that looks like. And we open it up to you all to share your thoughts and input. When I say that my door will be open as mayor, and that's literally what it is. Don't just walk in, but make sure we have that conversation so we can figure out what your thoughts would be. I would love to have these conversations more than just every 4 years. And figuring out if I want your endorsement or not. Those are the type of levels of transparency we have to have as a city. So I'm hoping that we can just grow that trust and grow that collaboration to make sure we can work together and move the city forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Prince?
Thank you. So let me start by saying thank you to the FOP and everyone who's here in attendance. I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to serve as an elected official. As mayor, I mean, there's certain times that it's not so enjoyable, but this is a challenge that I asked for. It's one that I fully understood upon taking it, and it's one that I continue to be committed to. As your mayor, I am going to continue on the path that we're on, and I believe that that is a path towards success. We have to take care of the basic fundamentals. We have to shore up our finances. We have to clean our city up. We have to make it a safe city. And those are all of the things that I've been actively engaged in over the last 3.5 years. I don't think the plan changes, right? That is the plan. I believe that once we do what we need to do, that the things that we desire, such as business entities coming in or safer neighborhoods and parks, I believe that those things all will occur. But listen, we have to do our part first, and we have to do it collectively. What I would desire is that regardless of the endorsement or regardless of what happens, is that at the end of this cycle, that we can all begin to work together, not for our individual alliances or individual concerns or desires, but as a city. What's best for the city of Gary? And that is to begin to make this the very best place it possibly can be. And that starts with understanding what our individual contributions have to be and being willing to work with whatever administration is in place, regardless of your personal views. Oftentimes that doesn't happen. In this case, it certainly hasn't. There's been many examples. To that extent, we don't talk much about it because there's too much work to be done. Yes, I'd love to see development in the city just as everyone else does. But what I want to see most is 100% complete accountability from not only myself, but from every member of our city staff, every department, every police, public safety entity, and certainly from me. And that's what you're going to get from me as a mayor. That's what you've always gotten over the last 23 years. And to that extent, I will not deviate from those goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a few closing remarks by me. I want to thank everyone for coming out. The attendance is great. I want to recognize our brothers at the Professional Firefighters 359, Brother Tillman and some of his men are here, and ladies possibly. I don't want to get myself in trouble. I think standing up here and hopefully standing out there that you can feel the passion that both of these gentlemen have for the city of Gary. It's very evident that they both love the city. And I hope the two of you, no matter what happens with this campaign, will work together for the betterment of not only the police department, not only public safety, but the citizens as a whole. That should always be the goal, and I think that is both of your goal. I want to wish both of you the best of luck with your campaigns. I want to thank everybody for their attendance. At this time, we are going to end the forum. I thank both candidates. We will clear the room and recess with the FOP members in 10 minutes.